Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Startup Grind Philadelphia. My name is Wayne Kimmel, and I'm the managing partner of 76 Capital, and I am really honored to be the host tonight for Startup Grind, filling in for our Mike Mayer, who is our leader here for Startup Grind Philadelphia. Unfortunately, he's not feeling well tonight, and I was very, very lucky to be able to fill in for him tonight and interview my very good friend, Lindy Snyder, who is the CEO and founder of Lindy Skin. And as many of you have been here for Startup Grinds in the past, these are global. Startup Grind is global, as you can see sort of on this banner down here. There are Startup Grind chapters all around the world, and we're really proud to have this one here in Philadelphia, and most importantly, at Benjamin's desk, which Mike and I are the partners who run this place, helped found this place, and really excited for what we've been doing here. We love the space. We hope you're all going to enjoy it and want to be members here in the future. So what's really interesting about Startup Grind is also sponsored by Google. And this month, Google has it's a really interesting program. It's called the 40 Forward. And that's actually the hashtag, the number 40 Forward, the hashtag for the event tonight, as well as the Twitter tag for, the Twitter handle for Startup Grind Philadelphia is Startup Grind PHL. So if you're going to tweet or do anything like that, please use those hashtags. And the interesting thing about 40 Forward is it's a women-led tech companies. It's all about women-led tech companies, and we're really honored to have Lindy here today. And it's amazing how women-led tech companies actually achieve a 35% better rate of success than most other startups. Pretty interesting. I'm also really happy that I'm an investor in our company as well, because that's a good thing for us, right? So it's exciting. It's exciting to have Lindy here today. And what we do at a lot of the Startup Grind events is I get an opportunity to interview our guests and hear their stories. So that's a lot what we're going to do here tonight. So again, welcome, Lindy. Welcome to Benjamin's desk. Welcome to Startup Grind Philadelphia.
I'm happy to be here. This is exciting. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So maybe we'll switch to a better one. I'll give you the better one, because I'm not going to do a lot of talking unless I get really. Well, you know what? It's about getting close. You know. So tell me your story. I'd love to hear kind of a little bit of your background. You were born and raised here in Philadelphia, correct?
I'm a Philly girl. I did not start out in the business I'm in at all. I was from the sports and entertainment business in Philadelphia.
But before that, so
I was born in Washington, D.C. We were moved here when I was a very little girl. So I spent most of my life here. Went to school here. Went to college outside of Philly and came back to Penn eventually. And then went to work in our family business while I was still in college.
And you know, when you talk about, you mentioned you went to work in your family business. Now, before that, I remember a story that you told me once when you were growing up, where you used to do your homework. I think that's really an interesting story. I think everyone will get a kick out of that.
My siblings and I, we used to do our homework in the spectrum underneath the stands, under the seats. And that was our family business, and that's where we ran around. My sister and I, as little girls, would go running around trying to feed the cats underneath the stands. Of course, we rescued all of them. They had them there, you know, for mice, but we couldn't abide by that. So that's where I spent my childhood and most of my career in the sports and entertainment business, the Flyers, and the arena business, and that business that grew as a result from that core business that we had here in Philly.
And now today, the spectrum which was where the Flyers and Sixers played all their games, is now where Xfinity Live is. So where did your homework? Next to the bar area? Or, there's bars everywhere.
I can't tell you.
Okay.
We've got these like little hidden places down there.
I'm kidding. So you went to work in the sports and entertainment business, and I'm assuming that was something that you felt you were going to do your whole career.
Well, I did. I love it still. I still love it. And ultimately, working different jobs in the arena business, in distribution of the product became very important. You don't just put on an event. You have to figure out how to distribute tickets, how to distribute sports gear, merchandise, broadcasts. So the business is much bigger than what it looks like to the end user, the consumer, the person watching a game on TV or live in the stands. And eventually, working my way up in the company, I worked on basically new business development. And that is, for me, one of the most exciting things you can do, because you don't know where it's going to take you. You have to be resourceful, you have to be flexible, and you have to look at new ways to do things that weren't done before. So I think it somewhat set me up to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in an entrepreneurial setting, and it seems to be that that's just the way you are. You know, you see people take risks, you live with them taking risks, and you watch them take risks to the point where you're not as afraid to take risks yourself.
It's amazing advice. Amazing advice. Now, how did you go from being in the sports and entertainment industry into the skincare industry, specifically for cancer patients? How did that? What was the? Is there a story behind all this?
Yes, and one thing I have to tell you is, as a kid, I did always make potions in the kitchen. I've been making skincare since I was about 8, and those weren't going to be marketed. But during a period of my life, I saw my 2 best friends going through cancer, and they're from 2 different sort of groups. They didn't know each other. One had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and was going through chemotherapy. One had breast cancer and was going through radiation. And both of them at that time were having horrible troubles with their skin. And they were both very distracted by that. It was disturbing, it was painful, and I didn't understand why that was such a problem. And I never knew that skin was an issue with chemo. You'd think hair loss. One of my girlfriends did lose her hair during that time. And I, as a good friend, started looking for stuff. My husband is an oncologist surgeon. I met him when he operated on my mother's cancer. In any event, I started looking around for product. I went on the internet, I went to drugstores, I went to my husband and all his doctor friends. I went to Sephora. I went everywhere I could to help my best friends.
And the doctors had all the answers, right?
They were like, we don't have anything. And it was inconceivable to me. And I think what disturbed me the most is that in our culture, we are obsessed with how we look. And there's every kind of skincare for, I don't care if it's men with razor burn or women and anti-aging. There's stuff for babies. There's special skincare for diabetics. There's special skincare for everybody and not a cancer patient. And I thought, wow, how shallow are we that we can't help people when they most need it? And seeing my girlfriends, and here we are in our mid-30s, it was ridiculous. And I became somewhat obsessed with the notion that this had to be fixed. And then finding out that at that time, and now it's even more, at that time, 42% of Americans would be diagnosed with cancer. That's not a little demographic. You know, now we're at about half. People live longer, they're going to get cancer. And they're going to need help.
So, 2 of your friends, and one of which is Lauren,
Yeah.
Lauren Hart, right, who sings the
National anthem for the Flyers at every single game.
Beautiful woman.
And would come out on the ice and sing, with just her head wrapped when she had lost her hair. That's one of my oldest friends.
So this happened. There was nothing that you could buy for them, find for them. There was, and so what'd you do next?
I started talking to doctors. I was able to leverage my husband's fabulous relationships. He was then the chairman of surgery at Penn. And I started interviewing oncologists. And I'll never forget one of the answers when I said, well, what do you give patients? What do you tell them? He said, I tell them to use cocoa butter. And I said, cocoa butter? Really? Why? What's good about cocoa butter? He said, my mother uses it. This was a top oncologist at Penn. He said, truthfully, we don't know what to do. These new drugs are causing more skin toxicity, and we need help. It would be a tool for us. Because frankly, we're trying to cure the cancer. We don't have a lot of time, to deal with the side effects. So that set me off on a mission of incredible research. And what I learned was there was no roadmap for this. It wasn't cosmetics, and it wasn't drugs. And it wasn't pharmaceutical, it wasn't cosmetic. It sort of walked right down the middle. So who were we going to be as a company, or how were we going to fix this? Who was going to give us credibility? In the end, we realized it had to get its credibility from the medical side. And we set out to then put together people who know more than me, a scientific advisory board to help advise me. But these doctors didn't have time to create this. They could conceive of it.
So how do you even make, what did you even know what to make? How did you know what ingredients? How did you even know? I mean, look, in many companies, as you know, it's just, it's a laptop, some Wi-Fi, and AC, and you need a little AC, and you're good, you know what I mean? And this isn't...
This was complex because you had to know about cancer. You had to know about the side effects of cancer. You then had to know about how ingredients interact with the skin. You had to know why can they use products out there? What's wrong with baby lotion or the super mild skincare products that are out there for people with sensitive skin? And we realized we had to ask the patients first. So the first thing we did was start asking patients. We had focus groups. What's wrong with all this stuff? And we showed them hundreds of products that might have been appropriate or that we knew doctors were recommending, until we started to really create a profile that was patient-centric. What do you want? What do you need? We had to go to our audience. We couldn't create a product and assume that this was going to be what they needed and wanted. We had to find out from them what they needed and wanted. That's the single greatest, most important thing you can do if you're starting a company or launching a product, is talk to your customer first, your end user. Don't make it and hope they'll buy it. You talk to them first, because then what you've designed came from the people that need it or want it or will use it.
So what was wrong with, a hand lotion that was good for dry skin for the regular person? What was wrong with that for someone who's going through chemo or radiation?
There's nothing specifically wrong with it, but it didn't necessarily do anything for them. So we don't knock any products. We think, anything that moisturizes and soothes, but we were dealing with radiation burns, with very specific rashes that come from these new targeted therapies that are very painful. These are conditions that could actually cause people to have to stop their treatment until the skin is healed. And our job is to keep them on treatment, so they never get to a point where their skin is so compromised that they have to halt treatment. And so first we had to know how to keep patients safe. All natural, not safe. You need...
Wait, all natural is not safe?
Not safe. And not all natural or organic is created equal. There are a lot of herbal, formulations in skincare, and it looks good, but you may have an allergic sensitivity to it. If it's unpreserved, you compromise a cancer patient with a low white cell count, they can get an infection. You can put your hand in a jar and put some cream on your face and you're fine. But if you have a low white cell count, that can compromise you. You can get an infection that can kill you, frankly. So, safety, patient-centric, understanding what the product needs to do and what it shouldn't, what you don't want it to do.
So you went through this amazing exploration and speaking with patients and docs. And so then it was time to make Lindy Skin, make your first product. Did you go back to your kitchen, like in the old days? Or what did you do? How did you put all the pieces together?
Well, we initially I went looking for companies that did focus on botanicals that were regional, that I could get to and from quickly, because a lot of the large formulators are far away. So I wanted to have a lot of flexibility in development of the products. It took us almost 2 years for a final product. And at each stage, we tested this with patients, but we started developing a safety profile, which helped me decide what the base of the product would be. And then looking at botanicals and other actives that were designed to do something specifically to your skin. Whether it was to be an anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, wound healing, things that were known and proven clinically to do those things, to have those actions. And in doing so, we put together, the other thing we had to solve for was scent. Things like scent are critical with cancer patients. My mother's going through cancer right now, and her favorite thing on earth is hard shell crabs from Baltimore. We all know how those smell, but I gotta tell you, she can't tolerate it. Sense of smell changes dramatically on treatment. And we had to create something that had a universally acceptable scent. And people say, well, why isn't it unscented? 2 reasons. One, most people, when they're in cancer treatment, they want to feel normal. They don't want such clinical stuff that's being thrown at them all the time. They want something cosmetically elegant that feels normal sitting on their sink in the morning and when they use it. And people are very attracted to scent. So we used engineered scent that takes away the sort of allergic reaction which some people can have from scent. They can have sensitivity. So we solved for that. So that's one reason there's scent. Patients wanted it. 100%. Interestingly. The second reason was the actives, the botanicals, have their own scent. And some of them don't smell good when they're all mixed together in a nice little broth. And so we had to create something that was, again, cosmetically elegant. And that's sometimes why you do that. So we had to solve for scent, delivery system. How does it go in your skin? Well, not easy. Not easy to solve all those problems.
It's easier to start some tech company. So then you figured out the brew, I guess, right? You figured out what you, and then it was to, you mentioned the fact that you didn't want it to seem, your product to seem clinical, so, or that it was too, just looked too medical, right? I mean, and so, how did you decide on your packaging of actually the products and the colors and all that?
Again, 100% driven by the patients. I bought 100 products, from the very clinical to the very fancy, flowery looking. We had men on treatment, women, teens, and we laid all the products out that are out there in the market, along these long tables and had them rate them. And what we found is that patients wanted something that wasn't so clinical that it looked scary or too flippant, cosmetic. And it seemed to fall right in the middle to something we kind of call apothecary. Safe, effective, but attractive looking product that didn't scream cancer on the packaging, because you don't want to remember every single second of the day. You want to just get on with it.
So you packaged it all up, and you just put up your sign and everyone started buying it, right?
No, this was the very toughest time. There's your product, what are you doing? You believe in it, you know, you have to believe in it, and we believed in it. We were ahead of our time, there's no question about it. One of the gentlemen, a pharmacologist I went to, who had developed a product for companies, huge companies, all over the US, he looked at me, this pharmacologist, and he said, how do you have the audacity to develop a product for cancer patients? You're not a doctor. Who do you think you are? He was mean to me. And I said to him, somebody's got to do it. And he looked at me, and he asked me 1,000 questions, and we parted company, and I decided I'm going to meet with him again. I met with him again, and he was horrible. He asked me horrible things, and again said, you don't know what you're doing. And I went back to him again, because I realized this guy, he criticized me, he was mean, he was difficult, he really upset me so much. At one point in a meeting with him, I said, why are you yelling at me? Stop yelling at me. And I got to tell you, the 7th or 8th meeting, I asked him to be on my board, because I had to get past him. I didn't need to get past all the people who said, good job, isn't this great? I had to get past the guy that said, you're out of your mind. That's who I had to get past. And he was the most valuable person on my board ever. Don't be afraid of the naysayers. Keep going back at them. That's what you have to do, is go back to the people who keep saying, no way.
So now your products, how many types of products are on the market today?
There's 14 in the room.
So the 14 products are now available not only online, but available across.
We're in almost every major cancer center in the country. We're in independent pharmacies, we're online. We just recently got a deal with CVS that's starting to roll out in the Northeast, and it'll start coming across the country in very specific stores that they're turning over that have much more therapeutic sort of culture. But when we rolled it out, we knew that people weren't just going to buy it. We had to go to the people that would recommend it. So we went to the doctors and the nurses, and we started going to the doctors and nurses where they were, their trade shows, their annual meetings, and rolling out samples of this. And initially, the nurses were, all I remember is walking into this gigantic trade show with Bristol Myers and Glaxo and Genentech and going, what am I doing here? You know, we were this big, and they were giants. And it took me about 10 minutes to think to myself, we belong here too. We belong here too. I mean, I could not have told you when I first walked in how intimidating it was. The response from the nurses was amazing. We were swarmed. We were the busiest booth at this annual meeting, and they couldn't get enough of us. The nurses loved it. They loved what it did. They tried it. And they started disseminating samples to their patients. And then the patients started buying it. And then the cancer center started buying it. And then eventually we did another annual meeting called ASCO. And one of the doctors there came up and said he wanted to study it in his patient population. And they did a clinical study with it. It was phenomenal. So it's been a long time, you know, it hasn't been easy, and part of it is because I didn't know what I was doing at the beginning. I didn't even know who to ask, because nobody made skincare products for cancer patients. If you have a precedent in the industry, you know, that you're in or looking to get into, get advice, you know, from the best people you can find, you know, to avoid wasting time or wasting money. You know, but you're going to make mistakes, and those are the most valuable moments that I've had for those mistakes.
Well, those are incredible words of wisdom and help, and that's what you're all about. That's really who you are. I mean, You're all about helping other people. And it's been amazing working with you. It's been amazing to sort of see the growth of the business. You know, everyone out there in the world who's watching this, and unfortunately probably half of you will end up having to treat somebody with cancer. This is your product. This is the stuff that you know you gotta look at. You gotta check it out. You gotta use it. And it's so much. You know, it's amazing. You've actually, your products have you know, been out there, and now they're so accessible because of
Distribution.
Your distribution and being online so much. I mean,
Right, and the other thing is that, you know, we don't really make skincare. And we're making tools for cancer patients to help themselves. You know, you start experiencing things that you cannot control. And it is very empowering when suddenly, oh my gosh, this thing's popped up, and oh dear, here I've got something that I can do about that. And there's probably, look, for whatever business you're in, you know, whatever you're trying to start, you're all human beings first. You have parents or loved ones or friends who get sick or have gotten sick or are sick. And when you want to help them, you want to find something appropriate for them, it feels not only amazing for them, it feels amazing for you as a caregiver. You know what I'm talking about. You know, to really do something that is tangible now. It's now. And as much as I love giving money to cancer research or to other great causes, I want to do something that impacts somebody this minute. And I think that's part of the beauty of this. And once you do that, impact somebody's life, you can't go do something else ever again. I mean, ever.
So let's change gears for a second. I'm back to breathe after that. So Lindy Skin on the business side is part of an academy called Startup Health. And out of full disclosure, I'm also an investor in that and on the board of that. However, well, that's my job, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar. I mean, one of the reasons I think we connect, I mean, thanks to Mark Brownstein from the Brownstein Group, you know, when we originally were introduced to each other, when he said, the two of you have to meet, I think one of the things that he recognized was that we both truly care about other people and truly care about helping others. And I think that's one of the things that's really been a great bond between, you know, us over the years. And I feel the same way with the team at Startup Health and what they've done. And it'd be interesting from your perspective to almost describe what Startup Health is and why Lindy Skin is, you know, one of the healthcare transformers as part of Startup Health.
Well, we were told about Startup Health from your team, and initially I was skeptical as to what this could be for us. You know, we were a little bit further down the line in terms of development and some distribution. Yet, I wanted to check it out. And I went to a healthcare summit that they held in New York City, and monitoring, and it was attended by Google, we had pharma companies, and we had investors.
Facebook, Twitter,
it was, everybody was there. And it was phenomenal because you have these incredibly connected companies that want to help elevate and find quickly best practices in healthcare, in every field. There's so much innovation going on, and the old model was you had to drum up a ton of money or get a big investor or a pharma company to fund something. Now you've got, if you think about it and you have an idea, you can join a group like this, and they not only help you achieve what you're trying to achieve, they help you connect to the right people, they help you find funding. I mean, I gave a pitch in front of 300 potential investors there, not because I was looking for money at that time, but I was looking for distribution partners because we want to go global now. So there was no better place for me to be able to do this. Where would I be able to sit and talk to 300 potential connectors or investors just like this? And on top of that, they had some phenomenal seminars that were meaningful. They were fantastic for people who, want to learn how to give an elevator pitch, want to learn how to ask for money or distribution or connections. If you're not good at some of those things, they help you become good at them.
Well, it's great to hear. There's a great picture of you at the it was actually in New York at Google, giving your pitch, and it was one of those things where it's interesting because you went into this. One of the things I've found from many entrepreneurs who go into the healthcare world, there was always something that drove them there. So your story about your two friends. And I think that's something that's sort of been across all of the different entrepreneurs that I've met in the healthcare world. And I think one of the things that we've tried to do at Startup Health is also to get some of the smartest, brightest minds in the world to start thinking about how to solve the healthcare issues that we have. And it's really wonderful to have you as part of that. So talk about Philadelphia a little bit. I mean, you're as we sort of started off, this is your town, and we are so excited for the way things are starting to move right now, and how the entrepreneurial spirit in this town, the fact that we call this place the epicenter of innovation, that there's so many amazing companies here, and there's so many incredible things that are happening with the fact that we have so many amazing, so many students in this area. We have such a big healthcare system that's one of the biggest in the world here. How is that? What is it like, sort of being in the middle of all that and building your business here?
Well, what I love about Philadelphia is you can get your arms around it. If you want to connect to people who are extraordinarily successful or they have large companies, there's access. Whereas in a city like New York, the access is not there, in the connectivity. It's much more difficult. The fact that we're between New York and Washington gives incredible access to a very, very broad swath. You may want to notice, a lot of biotechs have popped up here. You've got a lot of pharma companies that are based, starting in Jersey, not far, coming down into our area with very large campuses in our region. So we've kind of developed a bit of a specialty, in this biotech startup quietly. They're not pounding their chest, but you've got some really major innovation going on in this region. And it's exciting. And I think, again, because Philadelphia is not so full of itself, it's just easier to get things done, to meet people, and to sort of start leveraging the components that you need, whether it's connection, whether it's financing. It's a unique city to have this kind of access for the size of the city.
So I'm going to do one last question, and I would love to open it up for questions from the audience here tonight. If you had, this is a hard question, but if you had one wish or one opportunity to just do one thing, whether that's business, personal, professional, whatever it is, what would that be?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that today. I would have answered it differently a few weeks ago. I would answer it differently in a year from now, but I would certainly find a way to funnel a lot more money into cancer research. My mom is suffering right now, so it's very easy for me to be focused on what my wish would be. That would be my wish, because we're all vulnerable, and we need to understand that there's no easy answer, but there needs to be a better way to sort of bring these disparate groups together that are researching all over the place and not collaborative enough. I'd love to somehow create a collaboration that was a little more global, faster, and that's what I would want to be doing.
Well, I lied. One more question on that. Because it is fascinating to me with all the amazing minds that we have all around the world, and all the great organizations that are out there doing this research around cancer. You know, and you're right in the middle, and you know it from every angle that any person that I know. Why do you think the collaboration isn't there, and that there hasn't been, you know, I mean, there's been great breakthroughs, but why hasn't there been a cure yet?
Well, I think part of it is, for many years, I think it was going in the wrong direction. I mean, I think with gene sequencing now, it's creating more collaboration. If people that share and publish all of what they're doing, you'll see when you look at it that the major breakthroughs are coming from what they call personalized medicine. It's the ability to look at your own specific mutations and know if a new type of drug is actually going to respond. The trouble is, the whole population doesn't have these mutations, so you have to start to solve for that. I think it is collaborative. In other words, they do multi-site studies, you know, and sometimes they're all over the world, but I think there's a lot of competition for the funding, for the dollars. So that competition it's going to make it difficult for there to be true collaboration. When somebody has a discovery, you know, they want the world to know so they can attract funding, but then there's a lot of competition for that funding. So the question is, how do you eliminate that? I'm not sure. That's what has to be answered.
Well, thank you, and let's give Lindy a round of applause. And now I'd love to, again, Lindy Snyder, founder, CEO of Lindy Skin, an incredible business that really honored that you were able to be here tonight. So I'd love to open for questions now. Any questions? Yes.
Did you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Just a quick one. On the, you said it's non-pharmaceutical, so was there no interaction with the FDA to get approval for products, or how did that all play out?
So we're listed under cosmetics, and you do have FDA guidelines under that scenario. Which we plan to do, is file these as medical devices, then we would be under FDA scrutiny on the medical side. So it just depends on the category, but there is scrutiny.
That's my question.
Okay.
Meg?
Lindy, I have a question about your cancer centers that you're working with. Are you working with them directly as customers, and are they administering your products to their patients while they're in their systems?
It's different for almost every site. Some of them will use one of our products, for example, and give them as part of the treatment protocol for their radiation.
Right.
So others will recommend it as part of their treatment, and then the doctors and nurses will actually call, if they don't have a center or a place that sells, they'll call area drugstores where they normally send their patients and ask these pharmacies to stock it for their patients. If we attain medical device status on some of these products, then they will be able to then just give them. You know, if it's just that hospitals or clinical practices are not cash businesses,
Right.
they don't transact that way.
I would think the wound care clinics would be a wonderful target market for you too. I know the nurses in those spaces would love this as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true.
And then just a comment, thank you for your wonderful work. And I loved what you said about you're not just providing, you know, a product to people, you're giving them a tool.
Yes.
And it gives them a sense of control, which
Right.
my world is cancer care as well. And that anxiety that comes when you don't think you have options and you
Right.
don't know what to do, you're solving for a much bigger, higher level problem than just their skin. So thank you for that. It's great.
Thank you.
Well, I think that really, Meg, thank you, and I think it really speaks to one of the things that you talk about a lot is you don't talk about the product, and it's always about everything, it's the whole person. It's the fact that you, it's more than just the skin, right? I mean, it's
Yes, it is. And it's really interesting because, you know, one thing you mentioned I wanted to come back to, because this is a broad group and you may not be interested in skincare or cancer or anything else. But I want to talk to you about business and how Wayne and I developed a partnership. Wayne understood that we had introduced something new and we were a traditional product company with traditional retail. And he said, we got to see how much better you guys can do in social media, on the web, you know, online. And we struggled because it's different when you go and buy a piece of clothing or shoes or, you know, electronics online. You know everything about it. You know if you're going to like it. You've compared it. It's different to buy that kind of product online versus to buy a skincare that has to feel good, smell good, you're going to like it. We noticed that most patients wouldn't buy it unless they could touch it, feel it, know that they like it. And how to message sort of that more sort of traditional retail product online, like skincare, was very difficult. The messaging was difficult. And this is where Wayne and sort of technology came and helped us to hone in on the messaging, to, you know, make people understand, to feel something, you know, through their computer screen. It is not easy to make somebody feel through their computer screen if it's not a movie or one of those cute little puppy things, you know. I'm saying, so getting good at that was not my focus, was how to sell it online. It was just I had to get it into patients' hands. We were going through traditional channels, but the world's changed. So taking a traditional product and launching it into the cyber world, I knew was where I needed help. And that's where Wayne and I started to work together. And it's been a wonderful learning curve. So I just wanted to say, if you're not here about the more traditional part of it, that's how this collaboration came about.
well, thank you. And other questions? Yes, David.
Yeah, could you talk about a little bit about your process? You were deciding to look for outside capital, and you know, like you had a lot of risk going on. It sounds like you were doing some development of the products. You know, there's maybe some regulatory risk as well, and maybe you've been concerned on your part about losing some of the mission, you know, of the product as well as you're looking for outside investors. So I don't know if you could speak a little bit to what that was like.
So David's question is on raising capital, and that was originally how we met. Not first though. First it was through you know, as I mentioned, it was through a friend, just kind of working through it. But then, you know, going from your own money, family and friends, to us. What was that like?
Yeah. Right. Initially, I self-funded, and again, there was no roadmap for this. I grossly underestimated what I needed, but I continued to self-fund until we had a family and friends round, essentially very supportive, which really, really gave us enough to sort of take the company to the next level. We were still at startup phase, but we realized early we wanted to do things right. So for example, in terms of our process for product development, we brought in a woman that's from Johnson & Johnson. I mean, we had the right people. It is really important to put aside capital to pay the right amount to the right person. And hopefully that's somebody who knows more than you do. A good entrepreneur, you want a lot of expertise around you. You know, I don't want to do the books. I'm never going to be good at the books. I want somebody who can do my books, okay? But the point being is so that we had a friends and family round, and that was going very well. And we brought in the components that we needed, and then you had sort of the massive economic crash, and we lost funding at that point. And so we had to be in sort of hold on and duck, you know, and see if we can ride this out. We needed to cut staff, we needed to cut expenses, you cut marketing, you cut PR, and when you cut those things, you cut sales. So we had to figure out how not to lose sales during that period. not easy. Tough economic times allowed us to bring in commission-only salespeople. So we were riding that out and started to really breathe again, and then Wayne and I met, Wayne invested. We really refined sort of our vision and how we were proceeding. And it takes time. You have to be willing to put your own skin in the game. I have to tell you, that has served me greatly, is that people think if I'm willing to risk my own money and time and resources, then they feel more confident. If you want to get investors and you don't want to put a dime in yourself, if you don't have the time, I get it. But if you have to put in a little bit of what you have. You know, there was a point where I've taken no salary because that money needed to stay in the company. You have to be willing to take some personal loss or personal risk. If you really believe in it, it's not a sacrifice in the least.
Any questions? Well, I really want to thank you for being here tonight, for participating in Startup Grind Philadelphia, for imparting your wisdom on the entrepreneurial side of things. It was great, sharing your whole story with everyone, a lot of the personal pieces as well. And I think that what's always been great about Startup Grind and what we've been able to do here at Benjamin's Desk is we are looking to inspire entrepreneurship in this region and across the world. And you have helped us move that forward even more. And your story and your journey, and we will keep following you. Obviously, I will, and make sure that, and hopefully, we'll just keep making the story even better. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And really appreciate it.
Thank you.